people talk about work-life balance, and I just don't believe in the balance, because a balance is almost a separation. It's got to be blended. People really don't like using the word love in the workplace, right? If you don't love your people, you're going to struggle to lead them. If you want other people to experience joy and have fun and be successful, then you've got to bring it to them. You've got to be the nucleus, be the reason. People copy the behaviors of their leader. You show up enthusiastic, you show up with an attitude of you're important and I love you as an organization, I love you as individuals. People are going to imitate you. That's what happens in life.
Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg D. Koker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy, because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is JOY², brought to you by Ascencia Group. Welcome back to the JOY² Live with Joy podcast, where we explore the hidden power of joy in leadership, work, and life. I'm your host, Greg D. Koker, and today's conversation feels very meaningful because my special guest is not only a remarkable leader, but also the founding title sponsor of this podcast and a true strategic partner in the JOY² movement. My guest today is Wray Carvelas. Wray is an authentic, people-centered leader whose 30-year career has been defined by transforming organizations and delivering sustained bottom-line results by unlocking the true potential of people. He began his career as a metallurgist with Anglo American and De Beers before moving into project leadership with Kellogg Brown and Root. Wray spent 20 years with DRA Global, progressing from senior project manager to president and CEO of DRA Americas, and ultimately president, CEO, and executive director of DRA Global. Throughout his executive career in complex global engineering and mining environments, Wray demonstrated that strong commercial outcomes are driven by purpose-led leadership, aligned values, and engaged teams. His commitment to people extends beyond the workplace through longstanding community and leadership initiatives. Today, as founder and CEO of the Ascencia Group, Wray partners with executive teams to create shared vision, align strategy, and develop empowered leaders, delivering measurable, triple bottom line performance improvement by putting people first. Wow, what an amazing career path. And I wanted to share that, what matters just as much to me, though, is who Wray is. Because Wray's far more than my founding title sponsor. He's a trusted sounding board. He's a strategic collaborator. He's a friend. He's someone whose values are deeply aligned with mine, as well as what JOY² stands for. And when I first shared the idea of this podcast and this movement being centered on leading and living with joy, Wray didn't just say yes. He didn't just lean in, he jumped in. He said, and I quote him, "Greg, I'd like to get involved in your founding sponsorship program at the highest possible level." So I had created the founding sponsorship program with 4 tiers, and the first tier was, the lowest investment, and then the next tier 2, was a little bit higher. And I didn't even put an investment amount on tier 3, which is the platinum sponsorship, or tier 4, which is the title sponsorship. And I kind of put it out there that maybe there's someone out there, company, a person that wants to get involved in this podcast, in this movement, in this message in a bigger way, spend more time, more energy, and make it really, really take off. And Wray was that guy. And I literally almost fell off my chair, because this is a great reminder that anything is possible. Like I'm looking for tier 1 and tier 2 sponsorships and tier 3 and tier 4 possibilities, right? They seemed like a bit of a distant possibility. And anyway, after that conversation, Wray and I created what has become really an incredible partnership. And what struck me most wasn't just like the sponsorship level that he wanted to get involved, at the title sponsorship, the highest possible level. It was really raised why he wanted to get involved. And he shared that it had always been a goal, of his to launch a podcast connected to his values and his business, and that this felt like the perfect opportunity to accomplish that goal. And also, an opportunity to work with great people, make a difference in other people's lives and workplaces. And that alignment, says everything and it means everything to me. So, Ray, I am incredibly grateful to have you here. Welcome to Joy Squared.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for those very, very kind words. I really feel blessed to be a part of this. I think meeting you for the first time was just so inspiring, and listening to
Mm.
your thoughts around joy squared and living and leading with joy just resonated so much with what I'm trying to do right now in my life and in my business. And even as a leader in the corporate world, I wasn't successful because I was the smartest project manager or smartest businessman. Far from that. But I had the ability to motivate people and get people excited about what they were doing. And I know we worked through many difficult projects that we delivered, but people did it with they enjoyed it. And
Um,
hidden in that word enjoy is the word joy, and we had fun. And that's why I founded this company called Ascencia Group, is to continue doing what I love, which is empowering people and helping people to live, to their true potential, to their God-given potential, and have fun as you do it. So when you talk to me about the Joy Squared podcast, I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. This is what I've been waiting for. And that first lunch we had at the Harbourfront in Port Credit was just, yeah, I'm in. I'm not just in, Greg. I'm all in. I'm here to really help you and
mm,
spread the word that people can realize that work is fun. We can actually have fun and really get a deep sense of joy in the work that we do. So I'm super excited to be involved with your podcast at this level, and I look forward to really getting this movement going. And getting people to really get on board with living and leading with joy.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, we connected from the first conversation. I mean, I could just the way just who you are. You're just very real and authentic. And I knew, wow, you've run companies with up to 4,500 employees. Like, you were the presidency, and you don't come across. There's no kind of. It's not about the title for you. It's really
Hmm.
about the people. And
That's true.
I got really clear about that. There's no pretense. There was no showmanship. There's no competition. It's just like, hey, let's just do some great work together and let's have fun
Great.
doing it. And I remember, even I kind of in my book, I talk about the three pillars of joy-led leadership, and it's, purpose, passion, and playfulness. And then you kind of challenged me on the playfulness gently, and you're just like, great, I'm not sure if playfulness is going to resonate as much with leaders. And I remember presenting at your leadership panel, and I kind of toned it down to play because I thought, okay, well, play sounds a bit better than playfulness, and it was a step in the right direction. And then after further thought, and discussions, I was like, you know what? Play still might not send out the right message, and maybe unless you have the context for it. And so now we really talk about, the three pillars being purpose, passion, and fun. Because I think
Yeah,
it's important to have fun, and that's a big part of who you are. Which is great. So
yeah,
that was right out of the gate. You're like, and again,
lovely.
you're very gentle way, and very kind of an invitation to maybe reconsider that word, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, we've all got to be
That's great.
we've all got to be CFOs as leaders. CFOs in our business. And it's not the CFO of being the financial person, but it's be the chief fun officer. You know, make sure
Yeah,
that
I
your
love that.
people are having fun, and we should all be chief fun officers. And I think it's so important.
I agree. I remember starting to introduce myself. I went to a networking event. I was like, well, what can I say that's, I don't know, just different, that's going to stand out a little bit. And I said, what I really do is I serve as the chief joy officer for the clients that I work with. I have an opportunity and a privilege to just help transform things in a way that's sustainable. It's going to make a difference internally and then externally. And they were like, it was just like they hadn't heard that before. And again, I think to talk about joy in the workplace is, is really exciting. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but it just reminded me of when you invited me to speak at your leadership panel, with a lot of senior level mining executives about leading from joy. And you thought it would be a great crowd. And I knew it might be a challenging crowd to talk about, joy and leading from joy in that circle, and it was amazing, and I remember it was funny because I prepared, like, 15 slides. I didn't wanna didn't want it to be a PowerPoint presentation, but just to create some context and then, and then dive into the questions and the interaction, really make it more of a conversation, and halfway through the presentation, it was like, there's no way I'm finishing the presentation. It was just like you had questions, everyone had questions, and it was a highly engaged, group, and I remember what there was the conversation was really special, and your group was really engaged. It was a lot of fun to be there. And one gentleman said, "Greg, I believe in the idea. I love the idea. Love your energy. I'm totally on board. But how am I supposed to talk about joy, to my team, to my workers, to my guys, the miners on the front line?" And I was like, "We're just getting right into it, right? Right?" And it's a great question. And I remember just saying, look, maybe well, one, maybe it isn't about using the word joy. And I said, you can, one and the way I answered it was, one way to look at it is, do you really care about your team? Do you want your team? Do you want your guys, your employees to be happy? Do you want them to be joyful? And of course, he did. And I said, are you at a point in your relationship with them where you can ask them straight out, are you happy at work? Do you enjoy coming to work? Because that's a big question, right? And if you don't feel safe answering it, because they've done studies, like if someone doesn't trust their boss, they don't want to say that I'm not happy because they think they're going to get fired. Because why would you keep an unhappy employee there? But we're talking about flipping it around and what can leaders do to shift the way that they lead to create a better, safer, more fun environment. And even in mining, where physical safety is a very important part of the job, right? I even say that feeling safe and having fun on the job does increase your chances of not getting hurt. So, it was great. So, yeah, anyway, that just kinda popped into my head. I wanted to share that. That was a great conversation. I love the whole time.
We often talk about, before you can lead your people, you first got to learn to love your people. Okay.
Yeah,
And,
wow.
and, if you don't love your people, you're going to struggle to lead them. People really don't like using the word love in the workplace, right?
Yeah, we
Let
talked about
alone joy. Yeah. So we often talk about, before you can lead your people, you've got to really care for your people. And it's
Mhm.
not about, hey, Greg, I love you, man. Give me a hug. It's not that kind of loving and caring. Man, sure don't want you to get hurt today. Let's really go out there and work safely. Man, I sure want you to be successful in what you're doing. How can I help you and become that coach and that mentor? Then people
Yeah,
know that you care about them. You're not even mentioning the word care. You're not mentioning
yeah.
the word love, but just actively doing those little things that are making people feel like they belong really makes a big difference.
I think it's huge. You're right, because it's a big question to say, do you love coming to work? Do you enjoy, being here? But what are those other things you can do to start to create and pave the way for that bigger conversation? If that's too big of a conversation, like, is there anything I can do to, help you out today? Make your job easier today, make it more fun today, right? So lots of different things. So well, this is great. This is perfect. So yeah, well, I thought I'd start off with kind of you already really answered, why you decided to become a, founding title sponsor. That was kind of the first. And so I'll move on. I had another one. Like you've shared something really powerful with me, in more than once and in more than one way, which is that joy is peace, joy is faith, joy is love, and joy is success in faith, work, and life. And so when you think about joy right now in your life, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg, and it is something I think about a lot, because you know, people talk about
Mm.
work-life balance, and I just don't believe in the balance because a balance is almost a separation. It's got to be blended, you know.
Um,
Joy in
mhm.
my life now really means living my life with that deeper sense of purpose, that deeper sense of passion. Okay, and
Mhm.
there's a concept called ikigai, which I
Right.
know we've talked about, but ikigai is a Japanese term for having a reason for being, right? And the concept talks about doing something that you really love to do. And if that thing that
Uh-huh.
you really love to do is something that you're actually good at, and you can get paid a little bit of money for it, and it's also something that people need and the world needs, that is where your ikigai resides. And I think in my life
Mm.
right now, I think I've found that place. I love what I do. My clients tell me I'm really good at it. um, and they pay me a fair amount of cash to do what I'm doing, and I'm making a difference in people's lives. So
Mhm.
that is what joy means to me, and making time for those important things in your life, and having that blending in life is really important. So I think all those things is really, at this point in my life, is what it means to me. It's not all about just chasing accomplishments and chasing positions,
Mhm.
which I got to say, at a point in my career, that's what I did. And they weren't
Yep.
necessarily the most joyful times of my life. But having been in that place where I really feel um, I'm making a difference in people's lives, and I love what I'm doing, and it's helping me to provide for my lifestyle and my family. I think that's what joy means to me right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ray. And while I haven't, but had an opportunity yet to work with some of your clients, right? I've seen some of your clients through the leadership panel, and I see the way that you interact with them, and I see the space that you've created, and I can tell just by the conversations, and just in the seriousness and the playfulness, if I can say playfulness,
You sure
and the
can.
fun. It was like it was it was, I could just see you've created a safe space. They trust you, they respect you, and vice versa. You trust and respect them. And it was just a very easy, fun, organic, where we're having real conversations about real stuff
Yeah.
and having fun doing it. So it really gave me an insight as to, how you are, with your clients, which is really great to see. So I
So
got it. Yeah, cheers. And then you mentioned cultivating joy takes effort and that busyness can rob us of it if we're not, being intentional, right?
yeah.
So how do you intentionally create or cultivate joy for yourself personally?
So it takes a mindset. It takes an attitude of joy. You've got to approach and live your life with an expectation, right? And
Mhm.
having that blended lifestyle, and making time for these important things, and doing it very, very intentionally. Having that attitude of, I don't have to get up and do this. I get to be on the podcast. I don't have to sit here talking. I'm not doing this because I have to. I get to do this. This is a blessing. Okay.
Mhm.
When I go to site to coach people and work with people, I don't go there with an attitude of, oh, I've got to go do this. Hey man, I get to go do this. And I think
Yeah.
that's how we intentionally do that, is we gotta have that intentional attitude that I am making a difference. And I'm getting some important stuff done that's making a difference in people's lives. And, I recall when we were doing work at a mine in BC, in northern BC, and I had to drive from the mine to, it was about a 4-hour drive to meet with one of the people in the stores departments, in the warehousing departments. And one of the operators drove me from the mine to the offices on this 3 or 4 hour trip, and he started asking me, Ray, what are you guys doing here at the mine? And I explained to him what we're doing through our programs and coaching and mentoring with the leadership teams. And after I explained how we do everything, he said, Ray, whatever it is, he said, I don't understand fully, but please just keep doing what you're doing. I said, well, why do you say that? He says, you know what? I have this supervisor that really, I won't use the language he used, but really wasn't a really great guy. Like, people didn't want to work for him.
Okay.
He was a real grinding,
Right.
grinding horse's ass, if I can say that kind of leader.
Of course you
Um,
got. Uh,
he said, in fact, people would avoid getting onto his crew, um, even if it meant foregoing a pay increase. Okay. And he said, Ray, I don't know what's happened,
right.
but this is a different person. like he's a joy to work with now. He cares about his people. He's engaging, and you've got to go in with that attitude, to make the world a better place, even
Mm.
if it's one person at a time. And to me, that's how you intentionally create or cultivate joy. Is you've got to have that attitude looking for it, and you will find it.
I love that. And, as we've talked about, I mean, that's kind of what we're up to here. It's to inspire, energize, and empower people to live, work,
Exactly.
and lead with more joy intentionally.
Exactly.
Because I think there's a
Exactly.
misconception too about joy, or not a misconception, but I think we can expand joy. It doesn't have to be just a resort, a result or a reward or an outcome. As we've often think about it, if I do this, meet the metrics, then I'll be joyful, then I'll be happy. My boss will be happy, the team will be happy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And what if we live with it, work with it, and make it intentional? And really, like, use some of the ideas that you just shared, right? Really be grateful. I get to do this, right? And
Correct.
really bring that joy in, not wait. Okay, well, if we have a great meeting and they're happy with what I share and they decide to take action or they accept my proposal, then I'll be joyful. No, you're going in joyful. You're already, you're leading with that
You
already.
lead it. Correct. That's got to be your mindset. That's got to be your attitude. That attitude is everything, right? If you go in with that attitude, you're going to not only find more joy, you're going to create joy in that environment. You're going to it's you're just the nucleus of something much bigger that's going to grow. And you've got to have that attitude of joy. Attitude is everything.
Yeah, I love that. And you also wrote something, I thought was just great, and of course I can relate to, which is be the reason for joy. Which is what you're talking
Absolutely
about. If you want others to experience joy, it must start with us. Like we have to take responsibility for our own joy. Right? It's like the
correct.
oxygen mask philosophy. It really is. I know some people say that's a bit overused. I love it because I think it says what we want it to say. Like take care of yourself first so that you can, take care of your family, take care of your team, take care of your clients, whatever that might look like. And so how do you bring that philosophy? And you did you've touched on it. I'd love to hear how you bring that philosophy into Ascencia Group, in your own leadership.
Yeah, I mean, you can't you want to be the reason. If you want other people to experience joy and have fun and be successful, then you've got to bring it to them. You've got to be the nucleus, be the reason. Okay, um, and that's exactly, and to get there, you really got to love what you do, and you've got to show up knowing and believing in that what you're doing is making a difference in this person's life. Okay. But when I walk in there and we're spending time together and we're talking about how we lead and how we engage with people, and an important concept that I always talk about is how do we actively care for our people? And when you show up with that, and you talk about actively caring. I don't know too many people that respond negatively when someone actively cares about them. Okay. But it takes courage because it's not the norm for people to show up like that. Okay. It takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, this is more important than near term results, because if we do this right and we engage with our people and our people are highly motivated and really enjoying what they're doing, those long-term results will come. Okay. So let's focus on making sure that people, there is a culture of enjoyment. There's a culture of, you know what, we love what we do and we're having fun while we do it. And we actively caring for one another. And if you show up as a leader and be the reason for people to wanting to engage like that, I tell you what, it's inevitable that you will create that environment because what I've seen through my many years in leadership and leading people is people copy the behaviors of their leaders. Okay, you show up, enthusiastic. You show up with an attitude of I care about you. You show up with an attitude of you're important and I love you as an organization. I love you as individuals. People are going to imitate you. That's what happens in life. Our children imitate us, right? Um, and our people we lead in our businesses also imitates us. So show up, be the reason, show up with joy, show up actively caring, and people will follow.
I love that. So in other words, don't use sometimes the the parenting philosophy or technique of do what I say, not what I do, which never works, right?
Doesn't work,
You got to
right?
lead by example. I think, at work and at home, right? That just isn't a
Yeah,
very effective teaching, mentoring, coaching, parenting, leading style, right? And we're at the
yeah, and
highest level of disconnection and disengagement we've
yeah,
been in 10 years, right? So
and
it isn't
and
natural
and
for most people, like you said.
absolutely. And I'm one of those people that I really don't like some of these jargons like visible felt leadership. It's been the concept of visible felt leadership is being so destroyed because people have tried to implement that, and they've screwed it up really. They've got it wrong. So many people, many have got it right, but so many have got it wrong, and that's why I don't like those terms. But I like to say, be the reason, and that is leading with example. But I don't like using those terms because uh, it doesn't resonate anymore because people have failed at that. But if you can just be the reason as a leader for people to live and lead and engage with joy and have fun while they're doing that, man, uh, it will happen.
Yeah, there's no ceiling on joy either. There's no downside to actively caring for people. There's no downside to leading with more joy. There's no downside to creating a safe environment where people feel they can bring their full authentic selves to work, right? All of that is will create environments where people, want to bring their full selves in, right? And they're contributing more and they're happier and they've done all the studies. They're going to stay longer. They're not quietly quitting, like Gallup says, like so many employees are right now, right? They feel welcome. They feel excited. They want to work. Everything gets better, right? If you have a great, positive, happy, joyful work environment.
And get to know your people. People forget about your leadership, and I see it a
Yeah.
lot. Forget about the connection. You've got to
Yeah.
connect with your people. We, as leaders, we talk too much about our corporate values and the values of this
Mhm.
company and my values as a leader. Let's pause and talk about the values of our people and ask them, have
Yeah.
that conversation. What's important to you? Get to know your people. Get to know the struggles they're having in their personal lives. Get to know what their family looks like. Get to know what they love to do outside of being at work. And
Mhm.
when people as leaders make time for that, you build a connection with your people. People begin to trust you. And when you now show up with joy and people have a level of trust, and you show up with an attitude of actively caring for them, man, that's a powerful way to lead people.
I love that, Ray, because the thing is, it seems like there's less and less time to get to know each other at work. Even and it sounds like maybe a weird question, but I've asked lots and lots of senior leaders, even if they think the way that we think, and I'll say, what do you think a typical senior leader would think if they heard laughter in the hallway? There's a team, there's a group of employees laughing in the hallway. What's the typical leader going to think? Yeah, they're goofing around. They're not being productive. They're not taking their job seriously. They're wasting time. They're annoying me or whatever that is, and it's just like, well, and what about like, wow, we did such a great job of hiring. We did such a great job of creating a place where they're really taking the time and making the time to get to know each other and connect on a deeper level. Imagine how that's going to translate into their team meetings, into innovation, into customer service, into retention, into productivity, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So, and we've talked about this, a bit as well. Like we both know that, even leaders who prioritize joy still kind of face resistance, like even if it's a priority for them. So I'd love to hear kind of what tends to block joy for you personally and professionally. What gets in the way of joy for you?
So, I mean, I know in my career, I've had resistance from board level people, and, in terms of that engagement and joy and enthusiasm that I've tried to create in business. But you know what? That didn't hold me back. I believed so strongly in what we were doing that it didn't matter to me that some people, were resisting it because I knew that the greater organization believed in that, right? Um, I think in my personal life, and business life, my biggest blockers to that is trying to do too much. Okay,
Yeah,
when you
right.
try to do too much, these things that give you joy become chores, and when they become chores, and they become burdens, the joy seems to become less and less. So in my life, and I've been guilty of it on so many fronts, because I love to say yes to everyone. Ray, would you want to help with this? Yeah, I can do that. And then you're helping with this, and then you're involved with this, and then I'm very active in our church community. And then, Ray, do you want to do this? And I do so many things. And then at the end of, when you're doing too much, it just isn't fun anymore. So that's been my
Mm,
biggest challenges in my life, is not to take on too much. You really need to be able to look at yourself in a mirror and look at the brutal reality. And that's what I had to do, is when I'm getting overburdened, you've got to take a look at the reality of where you are. And you've got to say, you know what, as much as I love this, I have to let go so that I can really love doing fewer things. So for me is really try not to take on too much. Make sure that you're making a difference. You're showing up with joy, but you're not turning these things into a bit of a grind because you take on too much. And that's been probably
mm.
my biggest personal blockers for me, is just really taking on too much, and trying to step back from some of it, whether it's faith work or sports that I was very active in, or community work, and then all the business work. You need to be careful not to. Certainly, I've had to be careful not to take on too much and overburden myself.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I can totally relate to that, Ray. One thing that I've done too is sometimes I carry around this to-do list in my head that is massive, right? And it's overwhelming. And then I've just what I've been doing more and more of. I haven't perfected it. Well, not that you can perfect anything, including hairstyles, but I'm a work in progress, and so is my to-do list. But I started just getting really clear that okay, I have these. Let's just say it's 100 things, and maybe 60 of them are things that I want to do and maybe even need to do, but they're not important, right? Or they're not as important as a lot of the other ones, right? So it was really just getting clear about what are those top things that I need to do to move, my life forward, the business, with family first is my number one value, and what can I do? Take care of it. Better care of myself, and that one kind of is an easy one to fall down the list. And then the other thing I realized too, between just getting honest with my to-do list, one, just getting it all out, and then just kind of setting those things aside. So at least they're on paper. So that kind of helped me. So at least they're out of my head. And then I can kind of focus and look at the priorities. And then the other thing too that helped me is to I really looked at it. I looked at it not just as a to-do list, but as a to-be list. How am I being? Because I think that's more important than what I'm doing because what I'm doing comes from how I'm being. If I'm being angry or if I'm being frustrated, my doing and my actions are going to flow from that. If I'm being joyful, if I'm being grateful, right, then my actions are going to kind of stem from that. So I really kind of looked at before I start doing anything in the morning, just kind of getting myself grounded, enjoy taking responsibility for my joy. Some days it's harder than others. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it's not like every day is perfect, so, but, I think when you look at it the way that we've talked about it, I think it makes it a little easier, a little more accessible.
Yeah, you talked about being a work in progress. I absolutely believe in that. And until the day we move from this world to another world, then we'll always be a work in progress, and we've got to be able to see
Yeah.
ourselves like that. And you can't lead other people in business, or you can't lead other people to joy unless you can lead yourself. You've got to first be able to be a leader of self
Yeah,
before you
that's
can
true.
be a leader of others. And that means, yes, taking responsibility for the priorities you have, write them down. Make sure that you're spending time on the really important things that are giving you and the people you work with joy. And yeah, you've got to be a leader of self before you can lead other people, and that can be an obstacle.
I love that, and even on Sunday, I'll share a quick example, I was a little bit stressed, and I shared that with you, and, you shared some things with me that kind of relieved most of that stress, just the conversation and just how understanding and open you were to what we're chatting about, which is just kinda moving the launch date of the podcast out, right? Just because there were a few
Mm,
things
mm.
that had happened, and I didn't wanna do that, and you just said, "Hey, I wanna do it right, I don't wanna rush into it," And so that just kinda took the weight off, and it would just that made me feel better because I was already beating myself for not getting as much done as I thought I would and I wanted to on the weekend. And, and then my daughter asked me if I could take her to the aquarium, and luckily, we had already had our chat, and I just felt lighter, and I think
I
maybe an
good.
hour or 2 before, I don't know, I hope I wouldn't have said no because she doesn't ask me to do too many things. At this stage, she's 14, right? So, I was just like, "She wants to go to the aquarium, we're going to the aquarium," and I just got really clear that, those things that maybe I haven't done, I can do when I get back, I can do the next morning, and just
For
making her
sure.
a priority, and it was such a special connection to be with her and to check out the aquarium and then to go out to dinner and really have just such an amazing conversation and talk
Yeah.
about some things we hadn't talked about before. So yeah, it was really
Yeah.
special. So
Awesome.
priorities. It was joyful, that's for sure. There was tons of joy
Absolutely.
in that. And so when we talked about kind of what blocks joy for you, when those blocks show up, how do you kind of remove them or how do you kind of move through them? What are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that a little bit. So, it's about being that leader of self. It's about,
Yeah.
seeing, being aware of what's going on and not getting sucked in, that you almost self unaware of what's going on. You've got these blind spots. So it's that self-awareness that you need to have, that authentic look at what's around you and do something about it. Don't let it
Hmm.
suck you in. So it's that self-awareness, that self-honesty, that I can do things differently. And like you say, remembering that I too am a work in progress, and let me make time for those important things. And that takes courage too, because you're under pressure. There's demands to do things, and sometimes it takes courage to face it and say, no, I'm not going to do that. Spending time with my daughter this afternoon is far more important. And it's really
Hmm.
about that self-awareness, that self-honesty, and remembering that we also are just a work in progress.
I love that. And I think when we make those decisions that are aligned with our values, it does. It kind of just boosts that confidence. It boosts that clarity. It reaffirms that, I'm doing things that I say are important to me. It's not just a to-do list, right? It's literally like, it's not just a priority. It's not just a value I'm taking because it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to put into action. So I love
Hmm.
that. And it does build confidence and momentum. So in Ray, you shared a story once about like standing above a massive project installation. Uh,
Yeah.
and you realized the pride wasn't just about your accomplishment, but, about your team. And I just love for you to kind of share, that moment, with us.
Yeah, that was a big project we built. I was the project manager at the time, and it was a tough project. We took the project on, and it was already behind schedule when I got onto it. So a lot of hard work to put it straight. It was certainly by far the biggest project
Hmm.
our company had ever done, and we had a lot of fun. People worked hard, but they really enjoyed what they were doing. They showed up at all hours, work long hours, and you don't just do that. You do that because you feel like you're part of a great team, and all these great things that we did really led to the success of the project, because we had a team that was gelling, and a team that was was showing up with that passion and that purpose and that joy. So I remember standing
Hmm.
above the big primary crusher, which was about 60,000 cubes of concrete, which, for those who don't know construction, that's a lot of concrete, okay? And that crusher was poured. In fact, over Christmas, they poured that crusher on a continuous, I think it was a 2 or 3 day pour. So that's how long they poured this crusher with concrete. And I remember standing above that
Wow.
crusher when we were commissioning with the CEO of the company. Um, and he looked at me, he said to me, Ray, why do you do this? Why do you manage to do things like this? And with the success that you've seen, tell me, how do you feel right now? And I said to him, I said, the reason I do this is to stand here, and uh, I really feel a sense of more of joy more than pride. But I'm filled with joy, but I'm joyful for and proud of the people and what they've done. You
Mm.
know that you can't build a project like this with on your own. You need a team of people to do it. And I just say to him, just standing here atop this massive structure gives me an enormous sense of pride and joy in what the people that I've been leading have managed to accomplish. And I'll remember that moment there with Jan Steenkamp was his name, sharing how I felt at the time, and that's how I felt, just an enormous sense of pride as well as joy for what that team had accomplished.
I love that. And I love that he asked you that question too. It's a huge insight as to how, who he is as a leader as well, right? He
Absolutely.
cares.
For sure. Yeah,
And you're part of the team at that point. You're not just a
correct,
consultant, right? I mean, you're part of the
correct.
team. So yeah,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ray, for those listening to our conversation today, like, what do you hope they feel?
Well, I hope that those listening are inspired to lead with joy. I hope those people listening are inspired to find their own ikigai if they haven't found their own ikigai. I hope that people are inspired to really actively care for those around them, whether it's in family, whether it's in the community, whether it's in business, actively care, show people that you really do care for them. And I hope that sharing some of my stories has inspired them to want to do that and to come back and listen to the next episode of the podcast. Uh,
I love that. Spoken like a true founding title sponsor. That's so good. Oh man. And then just before we wrap up, if people are, listening and obviously resonating with your leadership philosophy, they want to connect with you and Ascencia Group, like what's the best way for them to reach you? And of course, I'm going to put all your contact information everywhere, including billboards, throughout the city and the world. But just for now, like what's the best way for people to connect with you, Ray?
it's either through my LinkedIn profile or email. I will respond. Cold calls, I often don't respond to unknown callers. There's too many out there. So the best way is either through LinkedIn. I do check my LinkedIn messages quite often, and otherwise send me an email. I will respond to email. So that's probably the best way. And yeah, you've mentioned our leadership roundtable that we have. People who feel inspired to get involved. I'd love to involve people in that, and we talk a lot about these kinds of things at the round table. So that's a great place for people to get involved.
And I was part of that roundtable, and it really is it's a great group, and the conversation was amazing, and you facilitated just in a way that people, they want to stick around. I think it was a three
Mhm.
hour, and had a few different speakers that day, but it was a 3 hour roundtable, and I think people would have stayed longer if if it was longer. So, and it was amazing. So, Ori, I want to thank you, for your leadership, for our partnership, for showing us what's possible. Like when we put people, purpose, and joy at the center of how we lead and how we live. And thanks for
Mhm.
sharing everything that you shared. Thanks for your faith driven commitment, to aligning family, business, and purpose. I think that's beautiful. And thanks for being the kind of leader that, who believes that commercial success and human flourishing are not like competing, opposing forces.
Cool.
They're connected. So, and thanks for being bold enough to jump in at the highest possible level with this. Thanks for being part of it. Thanks for helping to launch this podcast, this movement. I know how busy you are, and I know that you've been leaning towards saying no to a lot more things. So, for me, it reaffirmed that there's something really special in what we're sharing with people and the difference that we want to make. So that, the fact that you wanted to get in that, like that just kind of
Amen.
took everything to a whole other level for me. So that really inspired me. I was like, wow, okay, maybe we really are onto something here, which I do fully believe. So yeah,
Great.
I'm deeply grateful to be on this journey with you. And I'm super excited to start co-hosting monthly episodes with you too. So
Mhm. I'm
that's
looking forward to
awesome.
it. Awesome. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy to talk with you once again. And yeah, hopefully
Mhm.
people listening to this podcast are feeling the joy and getting excited to make a difference in the world, one person at a time.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And if something Ray, shared with you and if it resonated with you, I'd love to invite you to turn that insight into action, right? Joy is something that we build intentionally, one
Great.
action at a time. So If today's conversation helped you to see that more clearly, then we're doing exactly what this podcast was created to do, right? So until next time, everyone, keep choosing to live, work, and lead with more joy on purpose. And then share it, because joy is contagious and we need more joy in the world. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for spending this time with us on JOY², where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel. It's something you create, and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it, because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast. It's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing joy, squared. And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share JOY² so the ripple keeps spreading.